Now, I actually did another little video and it ended up having a little bit of bulk right here. So I'm going to clip this because I actually don't want to sew this into my seam allowance there. I'm just going to clip this part at, so about at like 3/8 of an inch from the edge. I'm not clipping it all the way here because I'm going to be able to tack that down. So we're going to do 1 cup at a time. Make sure you're getting the right cup on the correct side. So remember, we've got this piece that's going to be crisscrossing in the front. So I'm going to start over here. And you may want to trim up all your threads. So where I'm lining this up is I'm lining this up where the band at the front and kind of where the cup on the side. So kind of sandwiching this little piece in. And then, oh, let me trim this up. We don't need that. And then we're going to put this side over to the other end. And then we want to find the center. So we're just going to kind of lean the cup together and try and evenly distribute kind of the band curve with the cup curve. So you can kind of see how this is sitting. So I'm just going to find a spot right here and pin that together. Now we want to make sure that those white edges, so the actual fabric, not the overlay. The overlay has a little bit of play, so we don't actually have to line that part up perfectly, but the cup itself we want to line up. So then I'm taking and I am quartering, basically taking my little bit of excess and splitting it. And then I can go back to this little area and then I split that excess. So that way when we're sewing it at 1/4 of an inch. That 1/4 of an inch should be flat. Now I'm not going to be super worried about getting a pleat in here, because if I do get a pleat in here then I'm going to seam rip just a tiny bit to actually straighten that up. But this band and cup seem to be going in just fine. I don't see any issues here. I know it's tempted to do both sides, but you're going to get a little bit confused here. So clip some of those. You should see my floor, or maybe you shouldn't see my floor. I've got thread everywhere. I'll clean this all up in a bit. Okay, so when we begin sewing the cup, I want to actually have the bulk of the cup sitting up, so it's kind of like in a curve like this. And then we're going to get this over here. Now this, make sure that you do have a good stitch on here. I still have kind of a basting. I'm going to take my industrial back to a 2.5. Do a back stitch there. And it really, how you're stitching it should be on the kind of this side of where the where you had sewn the 2 cup layers together. That way we don't have any stitching showing on the outside. Oh, and in case I can't get my pin out. And you want to make sure that you are sewing this at that 1/4 of an inch. Unless you are a very large cutter and you cut it at a very large 1/4 of an inch, more like 3/8, then you want to make sure that whatever you're sewing it is where you cut it. So, it's looking good. I'm pleased with that so far. Okay, now we're going to get the other cup. And this one's a little bit more thread crazy. Okay. So again, we're going to line them up correct. Make sure you don't do it like this, so you end up with an inside and outside. I'm going to trim this up. I'm going to line that up over here. All right. Get that pin in slow-mo. And I'll clean all that up shortly. Oops, and let's, okay. And you want to don't need that piece hanging there. And again, remember, we're kind of lining up the cup part to the band part. This is at the bridge. Okay, I'm going to sit it here again, just like I did on the other side. Try to line the cup up, so kind of evenly find that middle. Now, you're welcome to put a little notch, like by folding it, but it's not going to necessarily be in the exact middle, because it's the way it's drafted, it's not going to be 100% in the middle. And then I take and I split that bit over here. Make sure I didn't do that anything weird. Okay. Then I'm going to split this bit over here. And then split this here. And so this one is going into this cup very nicely. And you should. And unfortunately, when you have a much bigger cup, and the more and more you handle it, it's more likely to have one of the pieces stretch. But remember, we actually reinforced this fabric a fair amount, so we actually did the fusible on both the band and the cup, so it actually should keep that keep its shape pretty good, so it shouldn't stretch out of shape. Okay. Oops, I managed to pull that out. So just take it slowly. I know I sometimes make things look very, very easy, and they're not. I've been sewing my entire life, like from the time I was probably like 3, 4, 5, stuff like that. So it's comes naturally. So do not expect, and do not get frustrated that your first sew is not perfect. Okay. Like that cup looks good. So we have a little bit of an issue right here, but once we get our casing in, I think it'll be fine. And then this is going to overlap. I'm getting excited. It's going to look really pretty. Okay, so now we can actually put in the casing. Let's see, do I have some casing sitting around here? Let me grab. Looks like I have some black. So this is, like I said, this one's for my sister, so I'm not going to be too worried about making this perfect, but hey, it's black and white bra anyway, so black casing works. So hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing clear enough. Okay. Just trying to clean that up a tiny bit. Okay, so if you look here at the casing, we have on the one side, it has brushed on the edge and kind of a flat part. That flat part, that does not go against the skin, that goes against the bra. The other side is completely brushed, and this is going to go towards the skin. Now, I've seen other ones that are a little bit narrower, some that are not brushed, some that are. This is just up to you on what you want and what you're able to get. This is the one I have on my website, so this is one that I know I have a lot of. I have this in black, white, and then I have a bunch of nude and red, but I'm actually discontinuing those, so those ones are going to be out. And I'm actually looking right here, and I sewed this really shy right in here, so I got to be really careful. And I'm actually just going to put a little pin right here, because we do need to make sure that so I'm going to put a pin where I see that I'm really shy on the seam allowance. And I'm going to fix it when I put my casing on. So I think that the rest of this one's fine, just right there. So I am on the inside of the cup. So you see the cup is facing up, the band is facing away, and I started sewing on the edge of my casing. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be lining this up kind of right to, maybe just a hair over that stitch line. So I'm sewing as close to my original stitch as possible. But when I get over here, I know I'm a little shy, so I'm actually going to kind of force this over a little bit, and then I'm sewing right on the edge of the casing. And you see, I do it little bits at a time because it's just so easy to get stuff stitched in there that you don't want to. And over here, I don't need to be so conservative. So I'm kind of going right on top of that stitch. Cut off. I don't. Oop. So it makes a nice clean finish on the cup, and then I'm going to fold this down and stitch again. And this time I'm going to make sure I kind of pull the side. I'm going to stitch on that casing first so I get it caught, and then I'm going to try and sew. Now, once you're really good at this, or maybe when you're not really good at this, a lot of people will take and just sew this on the outside of the bra. Not the casing, but they'll do this stitch that I'm doing right now on the outside to make sure that the stitch lines are even. I don't worry so much about that because really who's going to see this? And this is for my sister anyway, so. Okay, now over here, remember I have that little bit of the elastic, and I just made a really, it was really crooked right there. I'll show you in just a moment. So I'm just going to basically put that elastic underneath it, so I stitch that down. Now, if you had to make an adjustment for the two pieces to overlap, there are instructions with the pattern on how to do that. Yeah, and so this is, I could feel that it was doing that. So it just jumped on me there. So if I wanted to be a perfectionist about it, I'd probably seam it from here to here and just restitch this little area. I'm not worried about it. Okay. I'm gonna get this side going now. Needle down, get this over. Okay, remember I'm a little bit shy right here, so that means I'm going to want to fix when I'm sewing my casing. So I'm just going to overlap a little extra. So I wouldn't get too hung up about being perfect your first time, because you're not going to be. And as you can see, I've been sewing my whole life, and I'm not perfect. Now, I can when I want to be. I was when I made my wedding dress. I think my hem on my wedding dress took about 8 hours to do, because I hand stitched the whole thing. But I'm not going to do that on this bra. Okay, it looks like I'm a little shy right there. Okay. And then I'm going to fold this down. Ow, stab myself with too many things on my sewing machine. Tuck that elastic underneath there. And the idea is when you actually have to adjust So had I done this really well over here, when I adjusted, I would have made sure the needle was down. So when I fold this over, so it folds over the elastic, and I try and stop it when that needle is down, otherwise it will move on me. This side will be a whole lot prettier. Okay, so the next things we have to do is we need to do the elastic for the back, and we also need to determine the hook and eye. So before we do the elastic, we first need to make sure that the finished amount is going to be right at the width of your hook and eye. And so sometimes you're a little bit more accurate than others in cutting, and sometimes when you sew, you're just a little bit off. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim this a hair, just this little bit right down in here, just where it attaches. And I probably should have been a little bit more accurate about that. Oops. Okay, same thing with this side. And yeah, it's almost not much. I'm just going to do it to make the sewing process a little bit easier. Okay. So we have an adjuster in the front, but we're also going to have an adjuster in the back because these are going to get attached at the ring, and we may end up making some adjustments, and I'll indicate them on this video if for some reason I get all the way through this sample and I realize my elastics are too long. So for the back one, I'm going to do about 15 inches. And yours, if you're doing a much bigger size, you may need to make this a little bit longer. If you're going to make it adjustable. This one, it's because we have 3 different variables that are tying into the ring. We have an adjuster in the front and an adjuster in the back. So we may end up needing to make one of them a little bit shorter than the other. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our slides, and we're going to feed this through and attach our strap to the slide. And then same thing here. Come on, strap. Go together. Okay. This drives me nuts. I really want to get the knee lift on this machine fixed. Okay, so before we can attach the strap, we now have to come up to the front. And we need to, let's see, come through the back of it. So we have this adjuster. So this is from the front. So we're coming from the back of it through the front and then sliding. And I know some of you are probably like, it is driving you nuts the fact that I don't clip my threads. I know some people are like that. So I will make this pretty eventually. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we just are going to need to line this. Just that enough. And we're going to attach this here. So I'm going to get my zigzag. And so if I've got that here, then this is going to be like this. And I'm lining up the edge of my strap elastic right to the edge of my band. to this side. This side's a little bit easier to get this lined up because we start on this end. Oops. Okay, so it's starting to look a little bit more like a bra, right? Going to get rid of my zigzag. We don't need that anymore. And I want to just reinforce the top. I'm just going to zigzag, or not zigzag, straight stitch straight across, kind of doing just like a little row. You can do it as a bar tack, which is a real tiny zigzag, but sometimes I prefer to just do it straight because I feel like it's more secure. Strings, strings, and more strings. Okay, so here we're going to put the hook and eye, but we need to make sure that this is straight. So I'm just going to trim those elastics there. And I'm also going to be attaching the hook and eye with the straight stitch. You can easily do this with the zigzag, but even if you are going to do the zigzag, I would probably stitch it down first with the straight stitch. And so you can see this now lines up perfectly at the top and bottom. If for some reason it's a little off, you can probably even put a little pleat in there. It doesn't make a difference. It's just yours. Or if you're making it for someone else, it's a design detail. Okay. Now the other side, we have the hook side. Still want to trim this up. And then we're going to overlap and do the same type of thing. But if you look here, if I try and sew right there, it's going to be hitting the hooks. So if your machine can offset the needle, I encourage you to do that. If your machine does not offset the needle, then sew this first stitch with using your zipper foot so you can get real close. And then once you have it pretty close, then you can kind of come to the edge and then just do a zigzag over the edge. But you got to be real close with, careful with that you don't hit the little metal parts from the hooks. And it looks like I just run out of bobbin thread again. Okay, and we're just going to go in and finish this stitch. Get it lined up where it was before. Still not. Okay, come on, there you go. Okay, I have one last, well, a couple little details left to do. I'm going to trim up my threads so you can see a little bit easier what I'll do, and I'll be right back. The final steps. Okay, so now I've actually trimmed that out, except for this thread right here. I've also trimmed up my underwire casing. We'll have to insert that last. But everything else is good to go. We're finding random threads here and there. So there was a lot of stitching that was done on this. So it's very possible that I made the front adjusters a little bit too long, but I don't know yet. So I'm going to take now this overlap piece and feed that through my adjuster. And there was actually a little kind of a, there was almost like a little fold in there at some point. So you could see when we did the sewing, you can see it actually comes back out, and that was designed. So basically it's about a 1 inch overlap on there. So I'm going to get that pinned in here, and it doesn't matter which side goes over. We're just going to feed that through the loop. said it was about 1 inch, so I'm going to I think I accidentally trimmed down the one side on this piece because it got stuck in the machine. So I'm just going to pin that in here so it all looks good. And now I'm going to go over and I'm just going to finish this stitch. And I'd like to try and do it, it's caught on something. So where that elastic on one side finishes, I want to make sure that these edges line up. The edge of my elastic. I just realized my needle's still offset. It's okay, I'm not changing it mid-stitch. Now you could easily go in and also do that as a zigzag to clean up that edge. And come on. And I'm going to put this on the dress form next so you can actually see the last step of adjusting it. So I almost forgot we need to put the wires in. So the colored end goes towards the center front. I'm going to feed them in. Okay, and actually before I feed them all the way in, I'm going to come over and I'm going to reinforce the top of my casing here. Make sure we're not stitching over any, needle back straight. We're not going to be stitching over any of the underwires itself. Okay. I'm going to go back and forth a few times over the end of the casing. That's one side. And go this side. Okay. Come on. There we go. Did I do a really crap job? Kind of. Kind of ended up stitching it over the cup, so I will have to go in and clean that up because I know I could have done a better job than that. Okay. Then we have to get the other side, so we're going to push that wire all the way towards that center front. And then I'm going to do the same stitch over here. And this is going right over that elastic that's over there. Come on. Now what you might want to do, because I took my casing all the way to the edge, is you might want to go in and kind of hand stitch over the edge. That way it doesn't keep fraying on you, or you can zigzag right on the edge. Okay. And now I will go take it over to the dress form and we will adjust it to make it look right. Okay, so this is the ivy overlay, and I'm just going to make some adjustments so everything lays right. We have the adjuster here, and it's possible, I think I'll recommend that we might do a slightly smaller adjuster, but it may be fine. I have loosened the back strap all the way, and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tighten that up. And if you notice, as I tighten it up, it actually makes that cut fit a little bit better. And then I'm going to go to this side, tighten this one up. I need to will help to get that all straightened up. And there you go. So we actually will have a nice little shape, and you can't even see the adjuster on that bottom piece. So this is, and ignore the fact that this is small because this one was made for my sister. So we have the adjuster here for some reason if you wanted to loosen this one up and tighten this one to have this part a little bit tighter, you can do that. And you'll have a different effect. It just depends on how tight you want this front part and where you want this to lay. So don't get discouraged when you first put this on. If it feels kind of funky, it probably just means that you just need to adjust some of the pieces. But there you go. Thanks for watching. If you would like to have more content like this, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, or leave a comment below. Thank you very much.